Starting. Hey everyone, welcome to the Technology for Good show. This is episode number 42, an auspicious number. Douglas Adams would be proud of us. Life, the universe, and everything, apparently, we'll try and get through today. We have two guests on the show today. So the first guest is an old friend to the show, Chris Kernahan. Chris, give us a quick hello and introduction.
Hi, Chris Kernahan. I am a cloud architect and SAP mentor. So as Tom says, I've been on the show a couple of times and glad to be here again, Tom. Thank you.
Not a bother. And Michael, it's Michael Castellano. I'm living in the south of Spain. I'm tempted to call you Castellano, Berra. But go on, tell us who you are, Michael, who you're with, who you represent, and what's going on.
Okay, so Michael Castellano here. I'm the founder and CEO of a Silicon Valley company called Engager, and Engager is a platform where people can create interactive video, choose-your-own-adventure style video presentations, and very happy to join you on the show today.
Okay, so I mean, interactive video. That sounds no offense, but that sounds a bit 1990s. What's different about Engager? Why do I want interactive video? What are the use cases?
Yep. So when we say the word interactive, we really mean it. A lot of times in the past, like in the 1990s, when you said the word interactive, it meant that there was something that you could click on. That's very different from what we're doing. So what we're doing is you actually navigate what the video does next. You actually tell the video what you want to see, what you want to watch. You can ask it questions and it will answer your questions. So instead of just a hot button that you click on, this is actually, the video is driven by the user. So it's much more like you're having a conversation with the video, and the video is responding to you, answering your questions. A lot like having a conversation one-on-one with a person. Although it's video, it's on demand, it's all in the cloud, and this makes for a much more dynamic and interesting engagement, hence the name Engager. And because of that, we can get much more useful analytics and data about what questions people are asking and how they're interacting with the Engager. And using that data, we can help companies identify hot leads and good prospects.
Interesting. Yeah, I actually had a look at the site and at engager.com/engager, if I remember correctly. There's a demo of it with you standing there, giving the demo, and it does seem quite different. I was pleasantly surprised because as you say, you at different points are given questions. You click on a question and it pulls up another video. So I can see how that would lead to some interesting analytics to see which content is most popular. What are some good use cases for it, though?
Well, one use case that we're actually really excited about, and also I can see that your Technology for Good is really aligned with it, is we're working with a number of nonprofits. Just recently we did a project with Will Ferrell and a nonprofit organization called Cancer for College, and Will is the host of this Engager. He's the person on the video, and he is accompanied by the co-founder of the nonprofit, Craig Pollard, and the two of them have a virtual interactive conversation with people, explaining what the nonprofit is, what it does, why it's important, where the money goes. You can ask it all sorts of questions. There's also sections on the Engager where, if you'd like to, you can listen to some of the testimonials of some of the people who have been beneficiaries of the nonprofit. They give college scholarships to kids who have survived cancer. So you can ask those kids questions and you can see how this nonprofit made a difference in their life. So by going through this interactive video conversation, hopefully what we've tried to do is make a connection, maybe even an emotional connection to the nonprofit. And right there inside of the Engager, there's a donate button. So you can share the Engager, you can donate funds to the nonprofit, and if you do either of those two things, it unlocks some secret video content of Will Ferrell being funny, Will Ferrell being Will Ferrell, So it's a very cool online, immersive, dynamic, interactive presentation where this nonprofit got to explain who they are, and of course did a bit of good. So we were really happy to be a part of that, and so we're seeing more and more nonprofits use our technology to have a similar presentation and to capture the essence of their nonprofit and share it with the internet community.
Nice, very nice, excellent. Okay, we'll head into the stories. So before I start that, you can see on my screen here, if I get my finger down there, just under my name there, the hashtag Tech for Good. So if anyone wants to leave any comments or questions or anything during the show and wants us to address them during the show, no problem. Leave them there at hashtag Tech for Good on Twitter, and we'll try and get to them. Okay, so as usual during the show, we talk about different stories, lots of them. We have a load of them lined up. I don't think we'll get through all of them, but we'll give it our best shot. And our typical format is we start with a bad news story, just to kind of set a context, and then we head into all the good news and how tech is going to fix everything. I can be optimistic. I am optimistic. So let's do that. So first story, climate related, as is often the case on this show. Heat waves likely every other year by 2030s, says UK's Met Office study. This is a story from The Guardian. And I'm just going to skip through this because, you know, it's pretty much the same every week. There's always more climate-related stuff saying it's getting hotter, it's a record year. We saw last week 2014 is going to be the hottest year in the instrumental record, and so on. And this is just another one saying more of the same kind of thing. A new study out of the UK Met Office says we're going to have heat waves every second year by the 2030s. And so, yeah, more of the same, basically. So moving on from that into the better news stories. So apparently, according to this story in GigaOM, over 1/3 of new US electricity generated is coming from solar this year. So this is US based, but for the first 3 quarters of 2014, more than 1/3, so 36%, of new electricity capacity put on the grid came from solar systems, according to Solar Energy Industries Association, who, okay, they may be a little bit biased, but you know the data is good data, and it's coming from them, and it's nice to see that renewables are starting to become more commonplace. I mean, a lot of this is down to the fact that it's quite straightforward now, and it's getting cheaper now to deploy solar on your own home, for example. It's a lot harder to deploy a coal-fired power plant. So, you know, it shouldn't be surprising, given, as I say, solar prices are falling between 20 and 30% year on year, and have done for the last 5 years, and continue to do so. So solar is getting cheaper. It's easier to deploy. And you know, like I say, it's easier to put a solar panel on your roof than a coal-fired power plant, thankfully.
And the other thing, Tom, you know, there's a lot more people who are actually doing this stuff. It's not as niche as it was in terms of people who can come and put those panels on your roof,
yep,
or companies who can supply large-scale services to you know, state and regional bodies. There are a lot more of them, and the expertise is growing.
It is, and as well as that, the utilities in the US are now starting to see that this kind of thing is not a competitor to them, but is potentially a partner. So in some cases, they're subsidizing it for their customers. They're saying, okay, we'll put the panels on your roof, we'll own the panels, and we'll pay you for the electricity you generate.
Yeah.
So that takes away the capital cost.
I have to agree with Chris when he says the word mainstream. You know, for the first time in my entire life, on my Facebook feed, I saw one of my friends post his monthly energy bill, and he circled the fact that PG&E was paying him because of his solar panels. He was actually sending energy back into the grid, and so that month, you know, he made money. And so I think that that's the type of thing that really needs to happen, is when other people see that, it becomes incredibly common, it becomes mainstream, and then adoption is pretty swift.
Yeah. He's driving the meter backwards. So nice. Very good, very good. Yeah, as you say, Michael, we need lots more of that. The numbers are actually quite scary, and how much more of that we need, but we're getting there slowly, but we're going the right direction anyway. So there was another interesting story I saw out of Hawaii, and this one is nice because it comes from an education area, which isn't always the case. Normally, you see stories about this kind of stuff, and it's cutting edge stuff, but it's rarely in somewhere like education where it actually can make a big difference. So this one is nice because, like I say, these are school buildings that you see here. They're new school buildings just being built out, prefabricated for schools in Hawaii particularly, but it's a new type of design. It's like an industrial design, like a manufacturing facility, for example, with the kind of Y-shaped roofs there that you see, or sawtooth roofs as they call them.
Yeah.
Those have got solar panels on them, and these classrooms are particularly designed this way so that they're not energy neutral or net energy zero. They are in fact energy positive. They produce more energy than they consume, and they've managed to do that not just by putting the solar panels on the roof, but also the design of the classrooms is such that they don't need air conditioning and they need minimal light. So between the minimal requirements for light and the lack of requirements for aircon, they consume very little, and then they've got the solar panels generating energy. So in fact, they generate more energy than they consume, which is fantastic. And like when it's in a classroom environment and when you're bringing kids in and teaching them this kind of thing, when it's baked in at that early age, it has huge positive benefits. You've got to expect for society ongoing.
It would be interesting to see how water efficient they are as well. The energy consumption versus production is fantastic, but Hawaii is very, very green. It's in a tropical climate. Grey water systems and things like that would be very useful.
Yeah, indeed.
Scenarios.
And unfortunately, while you're right on Hawaii being very green and lush, given where it is, it's not actually very green when it comes to electricity generation. Most of the electricity there comes from imported oil. And they're trying to get away from that because it's massively expensive. They have the most expensive energy in the 50 states of the US by quite a margin as a result. So now they're pushing very much for renewables to try and counteract that, and solar is going to be a big part of that for obvious reasons.
Yeah, cool.
So we'll move on. And Chris, you came across this story about Ford, so we're switching topics slightly, and about Ford dumping Windows for QNX, which comes from BlackBerry, in their new in-car entertainment unit. And this isn't I guess a typical tech for good story. It's a transportation story, I guess, and it's an in-car communicated or a connected car story. Which is reasonably good. It's interesting to see in this case that Windows is being dumped in favor of BlackBerry, who up until now have been dumped by almost every consumer. So it's a bit of a shift in direction on BlackBerry's part, and it's something that they've needed to do because they've been cratering.
Yeah, well, we actually talked about, the reason why I find it interesting was, I think it was the first or second time I was on, we talked about QNX as their real-time operating system, and it's the length of time it's actually been around. It's been around for about 15 to 20 years, and I actually find it interesting from a standardization point of view, because we as we become more and more connected, we need more and more standards. So we have things like work with Nest and stuff for our connected homes and our smart homes. I actually find QNX to be an interesting one because as a standard or as a product, it has a long history and it's very stable and very mature. So seeing it becoming being put so prominently in forward, I think is going to drive a lot of interest in it.
Yeah, and as you say, and we will be talking a little bit more about this later on with some of the other stories that are coming up. Standardization is something that's badly needed, particularly in the Internet of Things space. So this might be an interesting one for QNX. Maybe it can kind of get a foot in the door there.
Yeah.
Whatever direction it goes, I have in my car, it has its own entertainment/navigation system, and quite honestly, I think I'm just going to go to the store, buy an iPad Mini, and put it right over the display, just because I'm so used to all of my Apple iPad things. And quite honestly, the Waze is a better GPS system than what's in there, and my phone system is a better phone system than what's in there. So honestly, a little iPad Mini makes for a better sort of in-car system than what's baked in by the manufacturer.
Get a Tesla.
Exactly. That's got to be my next car. But that's pretty much what I'm going to do anyway.
No, it's funny because I have my phone in my car, and like we all do, but I have a dash mount for my phone. So literally, when I sit in the car, I stick the phone onto the dashboard, and straight away, and it's got a reasonably big screen. It's a 5.5-inch screen. And straight away, I can fire up Waze. I can fire up a dash cam. So I have a dash cam application on my phone. And the way I have it mounted on the dashboard, it can take in, the dash cam application calculates the speed automatically based on GPS, but it's never fully accurate. So the way I have the camera pointed, it takes in the speedometer as well as taking in the windscreen. So it takes in everything outside the car, and also just at the bottom of the screen, it takes in the speedometer as well. So you've got the car speedometer and the picture of outside. Plus, I can plug in the 3.5-inch or 3.5mm jack and get audio. So I've got my entertainment system, I've got my GPS, and I've got my dash cam, all from my phone. So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, Michael. I mean, in-car proprietary entertainment systems, yeah, I don't know.
And this is how it can tie in for technology for good, because when you have these platforms like iOS, and everybody knows that they're in the car. Well, it's only going to be a couple weeks until some brilliant developer develops an emergency car app where I can, touch on something, turn the dashboard camera on, it sends an alert to the local police station, and ambulances are notified just basically by the camera watching what's happening on the road. So I think that this type of connectivity and sort of single platform or shared platform, I think that's really good for all of us, and people will find a number of ways to build on top of these platforms and make them really useful for everybody.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yep, absolutely. And we'll go on to the next story. So the next one was an interesting one as well, and it's again kind of a shift of emphasis here. But we were talking about iOS, so I'm going to use that as my segue in, because I like to be kind of smooth in my segues here. So this is about Apple and IBM delivering the first wave of their IBM Mobile First and iOS apps. And basically they made an announcement a couple of days ago, and this is the Apple press release about that. And this is something that's been in the works a while. They made an announcement a few months back that they were going to work together on this. And as I say, a couple of days ago they came out with this announcement now with a list of 10 different applications that they've released. And there are things like, planning flights, trusted advice on banking and financial markets, insurance, sales assist for retail, pick and pack for retail, telecommunications, expert tech, and stuff like that. So they're enterprise applications. They're not ones that your typical. They're not consumer applications. They're enterprise applications, and it's interesting because if you look at the market share of the two main players, who are iOS and Android, in the consumer space, It's roughly 25% iOS and 75% Android. That roughly. I mean, the figures change. You know, it might be a little more, a little less, but it's in and around that ballpark. But if you look in the enterprise space, it's almost completely reversed.
Yeah.
It's almost 70% iOS and 30% Android. So you can see that Apple decided very, very cleverly, I got to say, that look, this is our market to lose. This is not something we want to lose. So we need to team up with a big player. In this case, they decided to go with IBM, and we need to generate enterprise applications and also have a call center system backed up by a big player. So they have a call center help desk system run by IBM. They've got IBM's mobile first behind them as well, and they've now got applications for the enterprise. So they're absolutely trying to make sure that they cement their space in the enterprise rather than losing it to Android, which is a very big possibility if they didn't have a play in this space.
Yeah.
Well, so when I hear that, the first thing that jumps into my mind, and I don't even know if this is true, but I thought that at some point Steve Jobs made it very clear that Apple is a consumer electronics company, and apparently was very serious about that and not wanting to lose any markets that were focused on consumer electronics. So the first thing I think about when I hear something like this is, will this become problematic? While they're focusing on enterprise solutions, will they start to lose their edge on making beautiful, amazing consumer products? So that's the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear that.
I think not. I suspect not. And if I'm saying that, I'm saying it because most of the apps that are developed on the iOS side of things are developed by third-party developers. I mean, if you take a look at most of Apple's apps that they ship, most of the people who have iOS dump those and go with third-party alternatives. And that's not surprising because, you know, Apple are a generalist, whereas the people who are developing the applications are specialists for those particular applications. So it's not that surprising. So I think what we'll see is both Apple and IBM developing applications and others coming in as well. And the as I say, I think it's them making sure that they don't lose the space, and IBM trying to make sure they stay relevant in the mobile space. So I think it works well for both parties, and for anyone in the enterprise space, it means that they've got a decent choice.
All right, let me put it this way: Apple figures out how to increase my battery life, I'll let them move into more enterprise-focused things, but they got to figure that one out first.
Well, I think it actually plays really well because IBM in the enterprise space are just phenomenal. I know there is the old joke that nobody got fired for choosing IBM, but IBM were a trusted partner for so many organizations for very good reasons. Partnering from an Apple point of view, as you said, it increases the sort of the choice stability because for customers, because they have IBM on one side in terms of apps and device management and things like that, and then they have Apple in terms of the actual hardware and operating system and ecosystem. So to me it is a great partnership. It should be scaring the bejesus out of Google and Android.
Yeah, and I'm sure it is. I'm sure Samsung are kicking themselves and looking for an alternative to get in there. Yeah. We'll see if they manage to come up with it. In any case, for people who are in the enterprise side of the house, it's got to be a good thing. some of the applications that they're rolling out seem to be really good, and it means they've got a good platform with good hardware, good software, and as I say, competition in the space. Samsung no doubt will come up with something similar in the not too distant future. So I think it's good for all of us. We'll keep going, and the next, speaking of Google, there I go with the smooth segues again. Google have made a change within Google Drive, so that now you have a tool for creating custom maps within Drive. So it's just a quick thing while we're talking about apps and stuff like that. Basically, when you're within Google Drive, when you click on New, you can come down to the More link at the bottom and come out, and one of the options there will be My Maps, so you can create custom maps for yourself and have them saved within Drive. So that's a nice little feature. Again, just a little feature, so I'll keep powering through. And speaking of apps, again, this one for iOS, for anyone who's on the iOS side of the house, there's a new app called Workflow. And basically what Workflow is it's an iOS app which allows you to automate some of the tasks you do on your phone. So it's a bit like IFTTT, if anyone's familiar with that, except this one is more iOS based. IFTTT is more kind of what's the word, generic. It doesn't require a particular operating system, whereas this one, Workflow, is iOS based, but what it means is it can get down deep into some of the more common applications on your iPhone. So you can set it to do a lot of the same kind of things that IFTTT does, but you can get down more deeply than you can with IFTTT, and it'd be phone-based. And you can see here there's a couple of animated GIFs showing the kinds of things you can do. You can have it tweet out what song you're listening to currently, that kind of thing. You can have it, when you take screenshots, save them to folders in Dropbox, and lots of different things like that. It's not a free app though. It's I think $2.99 or something. Yeah, $2.99. There it is. So yeah. If you think it's something that might help you with your workflows, and you can spare $2.99, it might be an interesting one. If you're on iOS. If not, then we'll move on to the next story, which is this one. And this one is interesting. So this one I'm going to pause on because this is about a site that was launched last year called Open Sensors, and it's at opensensors.io. And what Open Sensors is it's a site where if you have sensors, you can have your sensors upload their information. Basically, it's a nice analogy, but they call it here Twitter for sensors. So I thought that was a cute way of putting it, because straight away when you read that, you know exactly what it does. It's a site where if you have sensors, you can have them tweet, to use Twitter's word, their data into this site, and it's open data. You can have it be private data if you want, so you can have it be a repository for all your sensors data just for yourself to see, but the default is for it to be open. So for anyone who's into playing around with Internet of Things and hacking around with sensors and stuff like that, it's a nice place to have your data stored. For more serious projects, and they go through a couple of them in the article there, for more serious projects, like there's a city in the UK that's using it for their parking spaces data. So as parking spaces become available and things like that, it's all sent straight away to this site. The opensensors.io. So it's a very cool little one, and it comes out of London in the UK, and one of the reasons that it's that it rings a couple of bells with me is because the people who developed it talked about it at our ThingMonk event in London last week and last year as well, just after it was launched. So it's one that we're quite closely aligned with in RedMonk.
That is just brilliant.
Yeah.
I looked at it and I just got the top of it earlier on, and I thought, God, I'm not sure. And then as you were describing it there, that is just unreal. You're tweaking my inner geek right now. I'm literally sitting here thinking about it, going, what could I actually do with that data? That would just be brilliant.
Yeah.
There's a friend of mine who's part of a company called Variable, and they have a product called Node.
Yep.
And Node is it's basically a sensor, but they have you can add whatever type of sensor you want to it. And they have one sensor that is really cool. It's a CO2 sensor. So basically, you take the CO2 attachment, you put it on your Node sensor, and now it's collecting CO2 data from where you are. Now imagine everybody with all of their Node CO2 sensors in a second, they're uploading or tweeting all of this CO2 data into this network. Just like Chris said, I mean, the type of insights you can get from that are profound.
Yeah, I mean, one great example is when you had the the earthquake in Japan in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
There was a site similar to this, and they used it for radiation readings after the Fukushima meltdown.
Yeah.
So lots of different people started sending information up onto that particular site. It wasn't this site; it was a similar one, whose name escapes me at the minute. I'll remember it in a second. But you know, when you have that kind of thing, there's a buddy of mine, a guy called Gary Barnett, who's an alumnus of the show as well, was on a couple of months back, and he's developing air quality sensors for London, for the whole city. They're going to put out about 10,000 of them throughout London.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned this to him at the time. I don't know if he's going to go with it, but I suspect he will, because he's a very open data kind of person as well. So it would make a huge amount of sense for him. And the project he's doing is government funded. So again, open data. So it would make a huge amount of sense. I'd be amazed if he's not going to use this. But it's all air quality around things like PM 2.5, PM 5, PM 10, CO2, NOx, SOx, all that kind of stuff. And if that's put into an open data system where everyone can look at it, something like this, and interrogate it in real time, then wow, amazing.
That's brilliant.
Good find,
Michael. I now know the Node system. I'd looked at it before, and that I love the interchangeable little bits on it. So it's such a
they even have. Yeah, they even have one little one called OXA, OXA, so Node plus OXA, and it basically measures for air quality. So similar, Tom, similar to what you were talking about. But I think what this shows is that there's a general trend right now where everybody is going to be in their own way. In the future, everyone's going to be sort of a lab assistant in sort of the worldwide research project. There's 1 something billion people on the internet, and in small little ways, I think the trend is we are all going to become part of this sort of decentralized research data aggregation.
Yep.
We're all doing our part. Every single one of us now is our own little laboratory. We're our own little scientist, and because I think, genuinely, I think most people do want to help. I think most people do want to add to the common good. So, if they can enable something on their phone, or if they can pick up a product from Node and start sending sensory data into sort of, the collective, A, I think people will do that, and B, I think that's going to start helping us better understand everything about the world we live in.
Yeah, it's crowdsourcing science. I mean,
exactly.
I gave a talk about this at our ThingMonk event this time last year in London, and I called it "People as Sensors," and basically talking about the fact that we have half a dozen sensors on our devices that we're using now and that we're uploading information about now. It might be location, it might be tweeting out something, it might be photographs, it might be whatever, but we're already doing it. And as these devices might get more complex, there are more sensors being added to just these. Never mind, things like.
I knew you'd get it out at some point.
I got a little Raspberry Pi arrived today, and I have an Arduino as well and stuff like that. So, we all like playing with these. Well, us geeks in particular. But something like this, the phone. Everyone's got one of these.
Yep.
I know, these kind of things are more specialist, but everyone's got one of these, and these got a ton of sensors built into them as well, and they're pumping out information all the time,
Yep.
By the way, guys, we have a number of viewers on. We're making a couple of contributions on Twitter. Uwe Fetzer, Michael Koch, and Jim Spath apparently are all watching us at the moment. So. Hi guys, and thanks for the quick comments there on Twitter. We'll move on. The next, excuse me, I have a bit of a cold today. Apologies for this snuffling. The next thing I saw that I thought was interesting, and we were talking about the Internet of Things there, is this Intel showing off its own Internet of Things platform. So this from Engadget. And basically, we talked earlier, Chris and Michael, about the need for standardization in the Internet of Things, and there's been a move by Qualcomm to set up standards. That they set up their all-join standard with their all-scene alliance, and now Intel are setting up their own standards. And they've got a few people like Dell and Accenture and those getting in on the Intel standard, and we're going to have a kind of a standard war happening by the looks of it. And that'll be painful for a little while, but when it all works out, which it will, it'll be we hope it'll all work out in the end, and it'll be for everyone's benefit. It needs to happen because right now there aren't any real standards, and I've got Philips light bulbs, I've got Lifex light bulbs, I've got a number of other things, and they all run off their own individual applications, and it's a real pain, and they can't swap information, and we need to have a some kind of interchangeable format, standard, whatever, for Internet of Things. It's going to happen. And both Qualcomm and Intel are making plays in that space.
It's funny actually. Intel's cadence in terms of its change cycle. I think if it really wants to attack that market, I think it really needs to step that up, because Qualcomm are coming out with chips on a regular basis to fulfill the need for the mobile devices that it supports in the Android ecosystem.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, it's actually a Qualcomm chip on the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, but it's all based on the ARM design anyway, the system on a chip. So, but I do think if Intel wants to take that market on, it's really going to have to ramp up with the Edison platform, that TikTok, and to take Qualcomm on.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Also, beyond just sort of the technological implications here, I think there's also a cultural implication here. I'm reminded by what Elon Musk did recently when he took all of the battery patents for Tesla, and when he released them, and they asked him, okay, Elon, why did you do this? What's your rationale behind this? His answer was something to the effect of, well, look, if we were all on a spaceship together, barreling through outer space, wouldn't you want one side of the spaceship to share useful information with the other side of the spaceship? Because if that goes down, we all go down. I think that set a certain tone and a certain culture in the business community saying, look, maybe just because something's not 100% driven by profitability, it doesn't mean that you necessarily should not do it. So for instance, if these companies have to give up a little bit this notion of we're the standard and we're going to be the standard for more of a collaborative approach. You know, how can we write APIs to integrate with other technologies? How can we make it so that our technology integrates well with other corporations' technology? I think there has to be sort of a cultural shift where people understand that the more sharing of information and the more collaboration, the better it is for all of us. And so hopefully that's the path we're going down.
But you're talking about collaboration, things like that. The consumer absolutely has a very, very clear responsibility enforcing that, because ultimately all this IoT stuff is collecting data about us, what we do, how we live our lives. So if we choose companies that don't collaborate, that don't share, we're implicitly endorsing their behavior.
Absolutely, and that move by Elon Musk, I think it does a lot to build the brand. I think it does a lot to build his credibility, the Tesla brand. I mean, I'm way more inclined as a consumer to go out and buy a Tesla, because I might be completely duped here, but at least I have the sense that this is a good company that I want to support. It's a brand that I want to get behind. So, Chris, I think that was you hit the nail on the head. But I think consumers are starting to vote with their dollars for companies that they at least believe are playing nicely with others.
Oh yeah, because if they play nicely with each other in competitive situations, then they're going to play nicely with you when it comes to their data.
Yeah, you build trust. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you can monetize trust. I mean, there is certainly a correlation between how much you trust a company or a brand and how much you spend. And so I think companies who understand that, I don't think they would abuse that, because things like that will affect the bottom line. So hopefully we're entering into an era now where companies are more interested on brand building, earning trust, quote unquote, being the good guys out there, and showing how that ultimately is going to lead to their profitability.
Yeah, Tesla though have a couple of other challenges to I mean, yeah, everyone sees them, I think, as good guys, and they have a huge amount of trust. But with oil going below $60 a barrel, the whole idea of buying a fully electric battery car isn't as appealing as it was when oil was over $100 a barrel.
But the thing about it is, Tom, when he released the patents, and going back to Michael's point, in order to support the gigafactory that he's building, to bring the price point of the batteries down, he has to have people buying into it. So releasing the patents was a really smart move. Yeah. And if he finishes the gigafactory, then you're right. At the moment, yes, as it stands, he doesn't have the gigafactory. He doesn't have that price point. It's still expensive. By the time that factory's built and he's got everybody on board and using his patents and all the rest of it, he is laughing all the way to the bank. And also, we have better cars and
cheaper.
Look, cheaper cars, cheaper electric cars, and just generally more technologically effective and efficient cars.
Yeah. I'm big fan of Tesla. Don't worry.
Oh, yeah.
Soon as I win that lottery.
I saw 4 in the last 2 days in the UK. I've seen 4 in the last 2 days, which is just I had to do a double take every single time. It was brilliant.
It wasn't the same one just circling you.
No, they were all different colours. They were all different colours.
All right.
I think he walked into the Tesla showroom. That's why.
Excellent. We're going to switch topics now and go into kind of more security-related stuff. And there's this interesting story I saw coming out of Google, and they've come up with a standard for non-password related identity management. And this can only be a good thing, I think, because I use an application called 1Password as my password manager, and it's a really good app. It works on your phone, it works on your tablet, it works on your desktop, your laptop, the whole thing. It syncs across Dropbox or iCloud or whatever other cloud-based thing you have, so your passwords are always in sync. There are similar applications like LastPass, and there's a couple of others as well whose name, Dashlane is another one, for example. And they're all pretty much the same. And we'll go into one of the differences in a second in another story. But it's insane. I have in my 1Password application, I have something like 2,000 passwords saved for different sites. It's manic. And trying to manage all those and trying to keep them up to date, and anytime I change them, it's particularly for applications I use often, it can be, even with a password manager application, it can be annoying. The move to a non-password world is one that I can't wait for, frankly. It's so annoying to have to manage all these passwords. And this standard that Google are pushing out, it's called FIDO, if I remember correctly, Federated Identity Online, I think is what it stands for. No, Fast Identification Online is what it stands for. And they've come out with this version 1.0 of the standard, and lots of organizations are buying into it. And in fact, it'll be able to use biometric stuff like the Touch ID on the phone and the Samsung one as well. So suddenly we'll be in a situation where you'll be able to use your Touch ID on your phone to access all kinds of different websites and not have to put in your username and password. And this will be such a godsend. It's just I hate passwords. Had so many problems with them in the last 6 months. It's just driving me around the bend.
I think when we start to use this type of technology for accessing things like biometrics, I think that you have to do a little bit more thinking through, though, because there are certain people in your life that you do allow your personal passwords. So, for instance, maybe there's something that I access, but I also allow person 1 and person 2 to access as well. Well, they don't have my thumbprint, they don't have my facial recognition, but I still want them to have access to it. So we still have to make sure that we're accounting for, okay, these are the people in my life that are supposed to have access to something here. So I don't know how you do all that, if you allow everybody to enter in their biometrics, or if you have sort of password fallbacks just in case, like, okay, well, you don't have the thumbprint, you don't have the facial recognition, but you do have the password.
Yeah.
As long as it's all smart and it all works and people have access, the people who are supposed to have access, I'm all for it. I'm like you. I have 1,000 passwords that I manage, but it's not just the passwords that I manage. It's the people in my life who are supposed to have access to certain passwords as well. So as long as somebody thinks through all of those different scenarios, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I mean, again, not familiar with the Samsung side of the house, but on the iOS side of the house, when you set up Touch ID on the phone, you can set up 5 different fingerprints. Mm-hmm. So it would be possible to set up fingerprints for 3 of your own and 2 of other people, or 1 of your own and 4 other people. Now that would be for your device. Right. Obviously, if you wanted access for another person from another device, that's a whole different ballpark.
Well, you get into the Apple ecosystem has been very proactive in terms of family accounts and stuff like that across iCloud. So tying back into those authentication methods would be fantastic. I know on the Android devices you can have multiple profiles on one device, but I don't think the same type of facility exists within the Android ecosystem. But if you could tie that against individual accounts against an iCloud account or whatever like that, you could do it. I know my wife and I share the same Spotify account.
Right.
So she has her device, I have my device, and we can both access our my individual Spotify account. So, as Michael has said there, being able to tie the biometrics of multiple people against a single account is one of those things that's necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very good point. We are at that kind of point where we're starting to get rid of passwords. They've been painful for so long, and they've caused so many problems. We've seen how many breaches this year. It's just insane. You don't want to be working in Sony right now, or you don't want to be someone who's worked with Sony right now.
No, you do not. Well, there's at least once a month. There's at least one.
A big one.
Yeah, if not a quarter. We've had Target, we've had Sony, we've had Sony twice actually, because remember the Sony
the PlayStation
network as well as Sony corporate. We've had Target, Home Depot as well.
There's been a slew of them.
Absolutely.
And the Target one, I think, was like 40 million credit cards were compromised, and that's and that a lot of that is just down to bad password management. It's just insane. So a lot of that you would hope would be made more safe by going with this new FIDO standard that Google are proposing.
It is just one last thing. I remember reading a paper by Microsoft about weaker passwords. So the difference between a strong password and a weak password. So using weaker passwords for non-sort of personal data containing applications, and stronger passwords for others. But I just hope we're not getting into another paperless office situation. We all live in it. So I can't wait to see this. Two-factor authentication with biometrics would be fantastic.
And we have examples today where that's working well. They're internationally, we don't see this a lot in the U.S., but internationally, when you go to a lot of the voting machines, I know that companies like Smartmatic, they have that personal identification protocol where they're using biometrics to make sure is this really the person who's supposed to be here and supposed to be voting. So we have seen that technology used well. Smartmatic's doing a fantastic job with that internationally for voting. So I don't think it's going to be a very long time until all of that technology gets down to the size of your phone or your laptop. So it's already out there, it's already working. So now it's just a matter of embedding that into everything.
In fact, this week I saw a story. I want to say it was Ohio, but I'm not entirely sure. But it's a DMV in one of the U.S. states which now has your driver's license as an app on your phone.
Oh, great! Yes, I saw. That was on the BBC.
Was it?
I think it was the BBC, but I can't remember where it was either. I think it's. I know who it was. It was Donnie Burkholz. It was Donnie tweeted about it because he said even in flyover states we have innovation. That's what it was. And that's what made me laugh and remember it.
Okay, I didn't see that actually, or I would have remembered. I must have come across the story some other way, but that, I mean, in the U.S. particularly, driver's licenses are a form of ID. So if you're getting a form of ID, nationally recognized form of ID now on your phone, we've come on a huge way, really have in this kind of thing.
Yep.
So we'll keep going. Because we're coming up on the hour and we still have a lot of stories to get through, which we're not going to get through all of them, but hey, we'll give it a good shot. We're still on the security space, and I saw this story speaking of the password management applications. So both the two of the three apps that I mentioned for password management, Dashlane and LastPass, now can reset your passwords for you. And this is a very nice bit of functionality, and no doubt it'll be built into the 1Password app that I have as well very, very soon. And basically what it is they have the ability now to come up with, I think it's about 70 different sites that they can reset your password for you. So you can, just say, okay, give me a new password on these 70 sites, and bang, off it goes, resets the password on the sites, authenticates, does the whole thing. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to remember, you don't have to care what the password is, because your password management application is all doing it for you and does that anyway. I mean, my password for Twitter, my password for Facebook, and Google Plus and all these, they're passwords that are in excess of 30 characters. They're auto-generated by the password management application. They have uppercase, lowercase, letters, numbers, symbols, the whole thing. There's no way I could remember them, which makes them all the harder to hack. So I don't care. The password management application could change that for me every single day if it wanted. I wouldn't care, as long as I can get in. I don't care. As long as I can get in, and as long as the applications recognize the password and let me in, bang, I'm fine. So having the ability to change them in one fell swoop, just go bang, change these for me, and down it goes. Phenomenal, really, really useful utility. One of the problems I have with the iOS ecosystem is that very frequently it asks you to input your password, and that actually makes it less secure, because it does that, you actually have to remember the password, and that's not something I want to do. I don't want to have to remember my password. When you restart your device, it won't take your fingerprint. It forces you to put in the password. There are other times as well when when you go to buy something, occasionally it'll ask you for your password, and because it does that often, I think it makes it less secure.
Yeah, because you start doing things. You're right. You start doing things to counterbalance that. Like you'll text message yourself your password, or you'll text message your girlfriend or your friends your password. You'll write it down in a conspicuous area because it's such it's so cumbersome that you start plastering your password everywhere in an attempt to counterbalance that. So you have a good point there. I think that eventually we're going to get to the point where systems will recognize you, whether it's with biometrics or whether it's with something else. They'll recognize who you are and whether or not you're supposed to be doing a particular function. But until then, all of these sort of single-use password apps, I think, are helpful. And share me the link with that one that you just pulled up, because I might actually use it. I think I need that.
I use LastPass, so which I find to be fantastic. It's a really good. It's a good cross-platform support, and it's just really handy. But I actually don't let it auto-generate my passwords for me. I actually have a password policy.
That's never a good idea.
Well, for me actually it's. I have a password policy that comes across all the apps and stuff that I do, but my passwords are usually in excess of anywhere between 16 to 20 characters, but it means that when I do have to log in, I don't have to refer to the app all the time. So, but I've had the passwords checked, on password, strength analyzers and all the rest of it, and they always come out as very good.
Sure. But if you look at some of the articles about passwords, they say that, for example, very often even complex passwords fall into patterns that make them easier to hack. So very often they start with a capital letter, and then the next 6 characters are lowercase, and then the 7th one is uppercase again, and they end on something like an exclamation mark. and when they fall into those kind of things, very quickly they can be broken. And if you go for something that's a random generator and you set it in excess of 20 or 30 characters, that makes it even harder again. You know?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just that the part of the problems that I had was actually it was just logging into different systems and things like that there, and it for me, part of the problem was actually the ability on the iOS device to use LastPass to log into websites, for example.
Okay.
Otherwise you have to use their browser, which is awful.
No, I don't use their browser. I know what you mean, but it's gotten a lot better now because on iOS they use Touch ID. So if you have a Touch ID device, you've no problem.
Yeah.
So, Michael, you were saying about that link. I will send that to you after the show. But what Chris was mentioning there, the LastPass application has that facility of auto changing your passwords built into it now. So of the 3 password manager applications we've discussed, 1Password, LastPass, and Dashlane, I use 1Password, which is really good, but it doesn't have that functionality built into it yet. Chris uses LastPass, which is also very good. I don't know if it does Touch ID on iOS.
I don't have it enabled, so I don't know.
If it doesn't, it probably will have soon. And Dashlane, I wouldn't recommend Dashlane. I've used it, and I would say of the 3, it's the weakest. So I would say of the 3, if you're looking for a password manager application, I would go with LastPass or 1Password. So we'll keep going. We've a couple of more stories to try and get through, and we're
It does have Touch ID, so it does, so you can, yes.
There you go. Okay, sorted on that front. Thanks, Chris.
No worries.
So, just before we wrap up, because we've gone over the hour as we typically do, because I'm a terrible timekeeper. So
I don't know if it's you or me.
Yes.
Blame it on the new guy. Blame it on the new guy. Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, God's sake, Michael. All right, two quick stories. And I'm plucking here from the many that we haven't got through. So one is this one. We're still on security, and it's the British GCHQ have launched this cryptography application for students, and GCHQ is the UK's equivalent of the NSA. And basically, they've launched a cryptography app, and I'm kind of mixed minds about this because, on one half, I like people to learn about cryptography and get into science and technology and this kind of stuff, and it's aimed at kids, and it's for now it's Android only, but they say iOS and others will be coming out in the next year, and it is aimed at kids, so all that's very good. On the other hand, it's the GCHQ, so I'm kind of, they've proven themselves less than trustworthy, and frankly, do you want to be helping them get people into cryptography? They've got their own reasons for wanting people to be in cryptography, but that's the kind of cynical side of me, and basically anyone getting people up to speed in cryptography is not a bad thing. Bottom line is that.
Yeah, I don't know. It is GCHQ. They are all secret squirrels and all the rest of it. But without people like GCHQ, we wouldn't have public key cryptography and infrastructure. It was a GCHQ mathematician who came up with public key infrastructure 2 years before. I think it was Stanford came up with the same thing. So seriously smart people. And what we also have to remember is that those organizations have lost a ridiculous number of people to places like Facebook and Google because they just can't pay the same money. So I can understand why they're doing it. I can see why they're doing it. It doesn't ease any disquiet that I have about what they are doing and what people are being asked to do behind closed doors. But it's cryptography is necessary, and the more it gets people into it, the better protections we can have.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, yeah, like yourself, I have misgivings because of who it is,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, I think, yeah, cryptography is it's necessary for everyone to know a little bit about it. So the earlier we educate people about it, the better.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing to remember is they're going through classic ciphers, and the vignette, the enigma, classic stuff, and that those are genuinely interesting.
Yeah.
And so yeah, pretty cool.
Actually, there's a very good book that I have in the bookcase behind me here now, by Simon. You can't see it now.
Simon Singh, yes.
Simon Singh's book about code. What's the name of it? Fuck it, I can't remember the name of it.
Because he's done Fermat's last theorem and things like that there, and the mass of the Simpsons, and
I've got those. I can't remember the name of it, but it's for anyone who's interested in cryptography, it's really good. There's another one by an Irish girl called In Code, which I have as well. I'll just see if I can find it here quickly.
Well, Simon Singh is one of only about 5 people in the world outside of national governments who has an Enigma machine.
Oh wow.
He actually has an Enigma machine in. I think I'm not sure whether he donated it back to Bletchley, but certainly he's one of only a handful of people outside of national governments or museums that has one.
Okay, so the book is called The Code Book. I just did a quick search there while you were chatting and filling in time for me. Thanks, Chris. It's called the Code Book. It's a really good book. If you are interested in cryptography at all, I would recommend it. I've read several of his books. I've read the Code Book. I've read Fermat's Last Theorem, and I've read The Simpsons and Their Mathematical Secrets. And it's I'd say it's the best of those 3, frankly. Now, last story, because we need to finish up. Unfortunately, Google for Entrepreneurs is now offering minorities up to $25,000 in data science scholarships, and we've talked regularly on this show about how lots of the technology companies have problems with the fact that they're like the 3 of us, white and male. And they're starting to publish the demographics around their workforces, and it is all essentially white and male. 70% white male is typical demographic in a technology company. So it's great to see people taking steps towards addressing that, and this scholarship for data science is aimed particularly at minorities. It's aimed at racial minorities as well as it's not just aimed at gender-based minorities, as in females. It's also based at people who are transgender and things like that as well. So it's great to be able to have not just people talking about changing things, but actually putting money into trying to change things. So hopefully we'll see some great outcomes come out of that.
Yeah, and that's not too dissimilar to sometimes what even the government does, or what certain grants who try to offset that enormous gap with some type of scholarship or some type of cash or check. So I think it actually makes sense that somebody like Google would do something like this. And of course, anytime there's a cash incentive there, it's going to move the needle.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see how much it moves the needle. So I guess like most things, we'll wait and see.
And you'll see as well, I suspect, that when Google throws some money at this, then it'll be a couple of weeks' time. We'll see Facebook come out with a similar announcement, and maybe Apple or another. So they've all got this kind of little competition going on about who can one up the other in this kind of thing. So
who's the most righteous?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's interesting because we Tim Cook has come out as a gay CEO, and then somebody else came out
That's right.
this week and encouraging more and more people to do to try and sort of provide a better platform and show more equality across because. When you're talking about minorities, some people are talking about the visible nature of minorities, whether they're women or from different ethnic backgrounds. But as you say, in terms of your sexual orientation, you can be a minority as well.
Yeah.
So by people standing up and declaring that they're straight or they're gay or whatever or transgender, you can bring into the light whether there is equality or where there is inequality, and I think grants like this do help, but I think also a bit more openness would also help as well.
Yeah.
But obviously, there are reasons why people feel that they can't be, and that in itself is a problem.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because well, it's a tricky topic, and in some parts of the world these things are less accepted, unfortunately, than others. I mean, this is a conversation I was having with my kids at lunchtime today. We were talking about homosexuality and the fact that in some countries, not alone is it against the law, but in places like Iran, it's a death sentence. Literally, they hang people who are caught performing homosexual acts. It's capital punishment. Holy crap.
Well, they also if you don't accept that, or I think the first option is gender reassignment surgery, and the second one is capital punishment, and that it is crazy. But we're not here to pass judgment on other regimes and things like that. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But I do think grants like this are very, very useful. So they are.
Likewise. Okay, guys, we've gone 11 minutes over the hour, as per usual. God's sake, Michael.
I'll never be invited back.
Oh, don't think about that. I've been invited back many times.
There you go. All right. Listen, thanks everyone. Thanks Michael. Thanks Chris for coming on the show, and thanks to everyone who's watched and who will watch, because this is also a recorded show. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your interest, and we will be back again next week with another show with interesting stories, we hope, and we'll see you all then.